She was just another face in the crowd, unseen, unheard, overlooked even by those who sought help. The daughter of a cleaning lady who passed too soon, Eleanor carried a silent sorrow, the kind the world often fails to notice. When her path crossed with the daughter of a fashion mogul, she was met with disdain. But no one could have predicted what was to unfold. The woman he dismissed. She shone brighter than ever. She became the star the whole world would come to admire. That morning dawned like any other. The rumble of cars at the intersection, hurried footsteps on the sidewalks, and Eleanor walking with a bundle of folded resumes tucked under her arm. Exhausted, she settled onto a bench in the Central Park, where children played beneath the shade of an almond tree. She tried to hold back her tears, but they came timidly, as if seeking permission. That's when she felt a gentle touch on her hand. A little girl in a blue dress with watchful eyes gazed at her, offering a flower plucked from the ground to make sadness go away, she said with a sweet voice. Eleanor smiled through her tears. She didn't see the elegant woman approaching anxiously, nor did she imagine that this was Isabella, daughter of Arthur Sterling, one of the city's most influential men. Minutes later, back home, Charlotte Sterling recounted the encounter to her son, and he, with a cynical smile, replied, "A park florist. Seriously, Mom." Eleanor was born on the outside the grand display windows, the exclusive parties, the fancy salons. The only child of a public school janitor, she grew up amidst the scent of disinfectant and the scribbled notebooks her mother brought home from the trash for her to draw on. She never had new toys, clothes that fit properly, or shoes that didn't chafe her heels, but she learned early to be grateful. "Some people have less than us," her mother would say, while ironing other families' clothes at night. Her mother was her anchor. When she fell ill, Eleanor dropped out of her education preparatory course and started selling mini cakes in the neighborhood to pay for medicines. Even with little, she never stopped smiling, but the illness was swifter than their strength. Eleanor held her mother's hand in the hospital bed, and with tear-filled eyes, she silently promised, "I will honor you, even if no one sees it." Since then, she began waking early every day, printing new resumes, and going door to door in the same well-pressed clothes, her hair tied back with the same old elastic band. It was hard. The answers always polite, never changed. "We'll get in touch, okay?" That morning, when she sat on the park bench, her body couldn't take any more effort. It just wanted a break, a minute of fresh air that didn't smell of frustration. That's when Isabella appeared, with her wild flower and disarming generosity. Eleanor had never been good with children, but this one, she was different, a way of looking straight into the soul, without hurry or judgment. The girl's gesture seemed simple, but it opened a crack in Eleanor's pain. And it was there, on that old bench, that Charlotte, the girl's grandmother, saw something her own son no longer could, a rare kind of humanity. Later, when summoned to the Sterling household, Eleanor still thought it would be just an informal chat. But when Arthur entered the room and saw her standing, dressed in her loose trousers with downcast eyes, he didn't hesitate to be cruel. "My mother thinks you can take care of my daughter. Frankly, I don't see anything special." And that's where everything began to unravel. Eleanor never dreamed of being wealthy. Her dream was more modest, to have a small place of her own, a table where she could have coffee in peace and perhaps work with children. She believed that if she could give others what she hadn't had, her life would have been worthwhile. When Charlotte offered her an interview as Isabella's nanny, Eleanor hesitated. She didn't know how to act in such a large house, with people so far removed from her reality. But she accepted, for the girl, and for the promise made to her mother. On the day of the interview, she wore the only stain-free blouse she owned. She tied her hair in a bun and walked to the mansion with timid but firm steps. Upon arriving, the first impression was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, marble stairs, too much silence. She was greeted by Charlotte, who treated her with disarming kindness. But Isabella's father, Arthur, barely lifted his eyes from his phone when she entered. "You can sit," he said without emotion. Eleanor merely nodded. While Isabella played in the living room, Charlotte led the conversation, discussing routines, schedules, and meals. Arthur seemed bored, until, in a moment of silence, he looked at her more closely. "You're the invisible type, aren't you? The one nobody notices. That can be good or terrible." Eleanor didn't know how to respond. She wanted to say that being invisible hurt, that the world already ignored her enough, but she remained silent. She was used to swallowing words. Days later, she was called to start. She was given a small room on the service floor and a white uniform 2 sizes too big. As she herself had requested, she had worn loose clothing since childhood. It was a way to go unnoticed. The first few days were strange. The staff didn't know whether to treat her as a colleague or a guest. Serena, Arthur's girlfriend, made a point of showing disdain from their very first meeting. "You're the new nanny. Well, at least you won't distract the boss." Isabella, however, was sunshine. She ran to Eleanor every morning, filling the room with drawings, questions, and laughter. With her, time felt less heavy. But on one rainy afternoon, everything crumbled. Serena, seeing Eleanor helping Isabella put on her ballerina costume, blurted out in front of everyone, "Funny how some people think that just because they can take care of a child, they're part of the family." Eleanor felt the ground open up beneath her. She wanted to disappear. That night, lying in her narrow bed, she remembered her mother. "Dignity, my daughter, isn't in the clothes. It's in how we treat others." And she still thought she could fix everything. The rain didn't stop that night. Outside, the sky wept heavily. And inside the service room, Eleanor cried in silence. Not because of Serena, it wasn't the first time they made her feel less, but because, for the first time in a long while, she was starting to believe she could be more. And now she wasn't sure if it made sense anymore. The mansion was cold. The wide corridors echoed footsteps as if to remind her she didn't belong there. Glances pierced her body with a mix of indifference and judgment. Only Isabella truly saw her. The next morning, she went down early to prepare the girls' breakfast. As she cut the banana into star shapes, she heard laughter in the hallway. It was Serena, strutting as if she owned the house, her high heels clicking on the wooden floor, her makeup flawless even before 7. "The invisible early bird is already up," she commented in passing without stopping. Eleanor didn't respond. She just took a deep breath. In the garden, while playing with Isabella, she overheard Arthur's voice on the phone. "No, I don't want another influencer nanny. The last one only took selfies with the girl. I need someone who stays quiet." It hurt. It wasn't about being ignored. It was about being chosen only for the convenience of silence, for not being a threat, for not bothering. That night, Eleanor thought about resigning. She packed her clothes in her small suitcase, wrote a note to Charlotte thanking her for the opportunity, and left the flower Isabella had given her the first time they met on the girl's bed. Before leaving, she entered the child's room. Isabella was asleep, clutching her pillow, her hair spread out, and a children's storybook on her chest. Eleanor slowly sat on the edge of the bed, watching the girl's soft breathing. "I just wanted to give you a little of what I didn't have, sweet pea," she whispered, her eyes welling up. As she was about to leave, the cold doorknob stuck in her hand. But it was the soft sound of footsteps in the hallway that made her hesitate. Isabella appeared at the door, sleepy, holding the flower. "Were you leaving?" Eleanor couldn't answer. She just knelt down. "Don't go, okay? If you do, I'll be alone." That sentence broke her in half. They hugged on the hallway floor for long minutes, until both fell asleep right there, curled up together as if trying to save each other from abandonment. The next morning, Charlotte found them like that. She said nothing. She just covered them both with a shawl and carefully closed the door. Hours later, she called Eleanor to talk. "You were going to give up, weren't you?" Eleanor nodded. "I thought there was no place for me here anymore." Charlotte held her hand gently. "My son may be blind, but I'm not. You changed the way my granddaughter smiles, and I won't let you leave because of other people's fear." It was the first time in a long while that someone said they wanted her to stay. That afternoon, Eleanor locked herself in her room, pulled out an old notebook, and began to write. She poured out everything, the pain, the anger, the loneliness, her dreams. She wrote as if bleeding onto the paper, and at the bottom of the last page she scribbled just one sentence. "If the world won't give me a place, I will build my own." Have you ever considered leaving a place, not because you wanted to, but because you felt unwelcome? Have you ever had to swallow your tears and smile for someone you love? If this scene touched you in some way, answer with yes in the comments, so I know you're still here. In the following days, Eleanor remained quieter than ever. She kept to her schedule, cared for Isabella with even greater diligence, but spoke little. Something inside her was still healing, Charlotte noticed. She knew that this simple girl, with light steps and eyes that avoided contact, carried more than just humility. She carried unspoken stories, invisible scars, and a courage she herself perhaps didn't even recognize. One rainy afternoon, while Isabella napped on the sofa with a book on her lap, Eleanor walked to the mansion's library, a room she rarely entered. The dark wood, the scent of old paper, the endless shelves. Everything there seemed to whisper things she had always longed to hear. Running her fingers across the spines, she found a worn copy of The Little Prince. She opened it to a marked page and read softly, "What is essential is invisible to the eye." She closed her eyes for a second. The sentence seemed written for her. There, alone among the pages and the soft shadows of that silent room, Eleanor felt something different. It wasn't anger, nor sadness. It was as if, for an instant, she had rediscovered a forgotten part of herself. The part that wanted to be more than just useful. The part that believed, even without proof, that her worth didn't depend on anyone's gaze. She returned to her room. She opened the suitcase that was still packed. She put her clothes back in. She folded them calmly, like someone closing a chapter. Then she washed her face, put on her uniform, and went down to the kitchen with a new lightness in her step. Not a weight of pain, but of presence. Seeing her, the cook smiled. "You look different, girl." Eleanor returned with a restrained laugh. "I guess today I just decided to try one more time." That night, she went up to Isabella's room and found her awake, with eager eyes. "You came back, didn't you?" Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed and replied with a tenderness that went beyond words. "I never left, Sweet Pea. Sometimes we just need to relearn how to stay." She didn't know if it would work, but for the first time, she wanted to try. As the weeks passed, something subtle began to shift within the Sterling mansion. It was almost imperceptible. A laughter that hadn't existed before, the sound of childish footsteps in the corridors, a less silent breakfast table. Everything started with Isabella, but the root was Eleanor. Every morning she prepared pancakes in funny shapes, spiraled fruits, and invented stories for every spoonful of refused porridge. She transformed simple lessons into games, and the monotonous afternoons of the house into small backyard adventures. Arthur, though he wouldn't admit it, began to notice. His daughter now smiled more often, told stories involving talking trees and stars that taught how to sleep. Details he hadn't heard since his wife left, but it was Charlotte who saw the most. She knew this wasn't just a service. It was dedication. Eleanor didn't just care for Isabella, she genuinely cared. And that kind of commitment isn't taught, it's a gift. One day, finding a sweet note from Isabella, taped to the refrigerator door. "Eleanor is magic," Charlotte smiled to herself. And that night, she made a decision. She called her granddaughter and the nanny to the living room, where some hangers with clothes from the new collection were displayed. "We're testing out pieces for the next campaign," she explained. "But we need help." Isabella bounced with excitement, running to the dresses. Eleanor, embarrassed, remained still. Charlotte approached with a serene smile. "You have a real body, dear. That's what we're looking for. Real people. And you have presence even when you try to hide." Eleanor blushed. "But I'm just the nanny," Charlotte responded without hesitation. "Exactly, because you are real." Carefully, she handed her a simple, elegant piece designed to enhance curves and movement. "Just try it on so we can see the fit, okay? No pressure." Eleanor went upstairs with the garment in her arms, her heart pounding. In the mirror, she saw herself as never before, neither beautiful nor plain, just whole. For the first time, she wasn't invisible, at least not to herself. Meanwhile, in the living room below, Charlotte quietly said to herself, "Sometimes the brightest stars are hidden beneath the simplest clothes." The next morning, Eleanor once again put on her white uniform, 2 sizes too big. It was like returning to the cocoon after a fleeting taste of flight. She tried to act as if nothing had happened, but something within her had already shifted. The way she walked, the way she met gazes. It wasn't vanity. It was a timid spark of self-confidence, almost imperceptible but real. In the hallways, the glances began to change. Staff who once hurried past now offered "good morning" with a more sincere tone. Even Arthur, who always maintained an indifferent air, began to observe her more closely. He didn't speak, but he saw. He saw the way Eleanor hugged Isabella when she woke, crying from a nightmare. The way she patiently helped the girl comb her hair and sang softly while tidying up toys. It was as if, little by little, his house was relearning to have a soul. But Eleanor struggled internally. She was afraid to believe too much. She knew that world could cast her out as easily as it had temporarily accepted her, and Serena's constant presence was a cruel reminder of this. The model paraded through the corridors like a queen, and whenever she could, she launched venomous comments. "Be careful not to forget your place, dear. You might try on a dress, but that doesn't make you a model." Eleanor offered a wry smile, but felt the wound reopen. At night, locked in her room, she looked at herself in the mirror and mentally repeated, "You are not an imposter. You have worth." Charlotte, sensing the conflict, approached. She discreetly began inviting her to small rehearsals in the empty salon. No audience, no camera, just her, a mirror, and the chance to see herself with different eyes. In each session, she taught more than posture. She taught presence. You don't need to be another woman, Eleanor. You just need to stop hiding from the woman you already are. But the fear didn't disappear so easily. What if this all ends tomorrow? Eleanor thought. What if they fire me? What if I become nobody again? That night, as she lay down, her phone vibrated. A simple message. "Tomorrow 9 a.m. We need you. It's important, Charlotte." Eleanor swallowed hard. She knew something big was coming. But then the phone rang. The Sterling Mansion's grand hall had been transformed into a makeshift studio. Clothing racks, cables strewn across the floor, spotlights pointed in every direction. It was a rehearsal day for the new campaign of the fashion magazine belonging to the family. A magazine Charlotte, even officially retired, still made a point of influencing. But that day, the main model had pulled out. Sudden illness, no substitute available. "Do we cancel everything?" asked one of the producers, flustered. Charlotte remained silent. Her eyes, however, went straight to Eleanor, who at that moment was descending the stairs with Isabella in her arms, both laughing at something only they understood. "No, the model is already here," Charlotte said. The chatter ceased. Everyone looked at Eleanor, who froze with the girl in her arms. "Me? You? But You are exactly what we need. Real, true, beautiful." Eleanor hesitated. Her hands trembled. Her heart seemed to leap in her chest. She was led to one of the rooms, where a stylist awaited her with a petrol blue linen dress, delicately tailored for real bodies. It was light, yet striking, designed not to disguise, but to elegantly reveal. As she looked in the mirror, Eleanor was startled, not by the beauty, but by the truth. For the first time, she didn't feel disguised. She returned to the hall slowly. Everyone paused. The same girl in the white uniform now walked with the dress flowing on her body, as if it had always been hers. The photographer adjusted his camera. "You can take off the robe." Eleanor took a deep breath. She untied the knot at her waist, let the fabric slide down her arms and fall to her feet. And then, silent. No clicks, no words, only wide eyes, smiles of surprise and respect. Charlotte watched from a distance. Arthur, who had arrived unannounced, stopped at the door, his eyes fixed on her. For a second he didn't recognize her. "Is that her?" he murmured. "The woman you scorned, Arthur. She's the one who gave color back to your daughter's eyes today," Charlotte replied. The flashes began. Each click was like a silent shout saying, "You exist. You are seen." Eleanor didn't pose. She didn't pretend. She just was. The last click was followed by applause. Genuine, spontaneous. Eleanor covered her face with her hands. She cried, but it was a different kind of cry. It was relief. It was liberation. Arthur approached slowly. He stopped a few steps away. "You are incredible." Eleanor looked at him with serenity. "I'm the same as always. Only now they let me shine." He lowered his eyes, embarrassed. "I'm sorry for everything." "No need. It was your disdain that made me remember who I was." At the door, Isabella clapped her small hand. "You're the princess in the pretty dress." Eleanor laughed and ran to her, picking her up. And there, in the center of the hall once reserved for the perfect faces of the elite, an ordinary woman became extraordinary. Not because of the dress, the flashes, or the applause, but because finally she was whole, and she was seen as such. 3 months passed since that photo shoot. The city now knew a new name: Eleanor Reed. She wasn't gracing magazine covers. Not yet. But her image, her body, her authentic poise illustrated a new campaign that was captivating the country. On social media, comments multiplied. "Finally a woman who looks like us. This model represents me. Who is this woman? I want to know everything." But Eleanor remained the same. She still lived in the same wing of the mansion. She still made heart-shaped pancakes for Isabella, read stories at night, and tidied toys with care. The difference? Now she wore clothes that fit her, literally and symbolically. That Sunday, the house was calm. Arthur was traveling for work, and Charlotte rested in the garden. Eleanor took the opportunity to take Isabella to the park, where it all began. They sat on the same wooden bench, under the same almond tree. Isabella picked wildflowers and made impromptu crowns. "This one's for you, Mama Eleanor," she said sweetly. Eleanor froze for a second. She still wasn't used to the word. "Can I call you that? Just me?" "You can, sweet pea. Just you." They exchanged glances and smiled, like sealing an invisible pact made of love and belonging. Soon after, while Isabella chased butterflies, Eleanor noticed a shadow approaching. She turned slowly. Arthur stood there, hands in his pockets, his gaze lighter than ever. "I knew I'd find you here," he said. Eleanor offered a small smile. "This bench reminds me of who I was and who I still am. I'm a different man since that day too. Not because of the campaign, because of you. For everything you gave back to my daughter and to me." He sat beside her in silence. For a few minutes, neither of them said anything. Isabella ran back, breathless. "Let's play family." "But we already are, sweet pea," Eleanor replied, pulling her into her lap. Arthur looked at her tenderly. "She's right." The breeze blew gently. Birds sang in the background. And in that simple setting, Eleanor understood. She didn't conquer the world, but she conquered what was inside her. Eleanor never imagined she would one day be admired. Nor did she expect applause, cameras, or compliments. All she ever wanted was to be treated with respect. And in the end, it was precisely the truth she carried, the one the world had so often tried to extinguish, that made her different, not by changing who she was, but by finally allowing her essence to be seen. The lesson she learned didn't come easily. It came with closed doors, sidelong glances, cutting remarks, and sleepless nights. But it also came with unexpected hugs, flowers offered by small hands, and sincere smiles. Eleanor understood that brightness isn't always in what glitters. Sometimes it's in what resists. And no matter how hard they tried to hide her, she learned to reveal herself with tenderness, with courage, with love. Because when a woman discovers her worth, the whole world begins to see with different eyes. And perhaps you've been through this too. Maybe you've been ignored, underestimated, judged by what you wear, where you come from, or how you speak. But if there's one thing Eleanor's story proves, it's that you don't need to fit any mold to be worthy of respect. You don't need to look like anyone else, just be yourself, because your story matters. And one day, maybe not today, but one day, the world will see the light you carry within. If this story moved you in any way, leave your like. That shows it was worth telling. Tell me in the comments below which city you're watching from. I read everything, and I lovingly reply to those who take a moment to write. And if you believe in the power of stories like these, real, emotional, with soul, subscribe to the channel. With every new subscription, I gain more strength to continue bringing stories that touch the heart. And don't leave yet, okay? Choose one of the 2 stories I left on screen for you. I'll see you in the next video.